Sir, we are live. Please go ahead.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. With a deep sense of gratitude on behalf of ASSOCHAM, I, Bharat Jaiswal, Regional Director ASSOCHAM, would like to welcome you all in today's virtual meet on ease of doing business, discussing the impact of COVID-19 scenario on revenue and employment generation. India saw an unemployment rate of over 6%. This was a significant improvement from the previous month, a possibly result of a decrease in demand as well as disruption of workforce faced by companies. Undoubtedly, the COVID-19 pandemic in India has very severely impacted, rather negatively, the employment figure of India. Since early 2020, though good results have started coming, on the other hand, the employment rate stands at 12.4%. Urban is 15.1% and rural is 11.2%, as on 3rd June 2021. To discuss the same, ASSOCHAM as a responsible chamber is organizing today's discussion, and we have hope that today's discussion will be a fruitful one. We have experts joining from different part of country. Sri Bijon Mishra, founder for Partnership for Safe Medicine, PSM India. Dr. Abhijit Sarkar, Senior Vice President, Sher Khan. Sri Divyen Narayan, Director Corporate Relations, Soviet University. Sri Siva Sankar Mahato, Vice President and Project Head, Aditya Birla Group. Sri Suresh Sikla, General Manager, Jindal Steel and Power Limited. Sri Abhishek Pandit, Director, Advantage. Srimati Pooja Jaiswal, CEO, Skiptel Technologies Private Limited. The session will be moderated by Mr. Manu Seth. I feel elated in welcoming Mr. Manu Seth, the moderator and the CEO. The CEO for the Speaking Minds and International Business Consultant for CEOs Club Network. He is a motivated business leader with a passion for creating value innovation and delivering technology services that have a positive impact on the people's life. Well over 25 years of demonstrative performance excellence in driving and scaling business at national and international level. So over to you, Mr. Seth, from here onwards.
Thanks, Bharat. Thanks, ASSOCHAM, and I really appreciate the untiring efforts put in by you and the team and ASSOCHAM which is an esteemed trade promotion council for the Indian country market, which is a growing economy, where we are touching on various points, various upcoming points, various burning concerns. And I would welcome all the esteemed panelists. It's really great to have you all with such a vast learning experience and great words of wisdom from you all in different fields. And it's always really exciting when you have people from different walks of life really adding great value, so that it really becomes more exciting and more, at times it's controversial also, but it's good also, because that's how you, it's like a potluck. You shake the pot and you get a lot of good ideas. So without taking any further time, I would love to move forward. And as the topic itself says, we are calling it ease of doing business. We are calling it employment, a lot of other things. So I would love to hear and would love to kickstart from Shri Bijon Mishra Sahab, that what is that you would like to recommend or point out and give an upside, that how the world has been changing from the last dreadful 12, 18, 16 months, where there was a lot of uncertainty, and how do you see the positive outlook is really upcoming? What are the brighter sides to the industry in the health segment, which has really brought the whole world on the common platform, on a common table, where everyone is really working on health as a domain. So Professor, up to you first, and then we will move on to the other fellow panelists.
So please unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Manu, for the wonderful, very pleasant introduction you gave. And I want to first take this opportunity to congratulate Bharat and team and ASSOCHAM for bringing in this conversation. When we talk about ease of doing business, what does it mean? It means nobody should be breathing over your shoulder, which means that I should be left to be creative and to be innovative, to do or conduct a business or an activity which will generate wealth for the country and enhance the quality of life for citizens. I mean, in brief, ease of doing business for me is that while you have your rules and regulations and standards and laws which are needed to give the minimum benchmark in terms of your conduct, you also need to be creative and innovative. It's not only the law which drives you, it actually more than the law which drives you. You know, and that is why we constantly keep setting standards for ourselves. And what is that standard? That standard is something which is better than what it is existing today globally. So we always look at the global best standards as our benchmark and then try to improve on it based on what? Based on where I come from, you know, the consumers. I always speak on behalf of the consumers. And why I speak that? Because if the consumer is not there, nothing would be existing. Let's understand that. If citizens are not there, where is the nation? Where is the country? So what my contention is, if you want to do business, the first thing is you need to understand what does that consumer want in a most affordable manner, which will bring that value for money and that smile on the face of the consumer, which he is prepared to pay for to access that product or service. So coming from there, if I want to generate employment, if I want to conduct business, which is ease of doing business, the first thing is for me is setting standards. And when I say setting standards, and COVID has shown us huge amount of innovation has taken place in terms of vaccine at such a short time. You have seen so many equipment, so many medical devices getting manufactured in the country, which was never manufactured earlier, and we started exporting in no time in terms of India becoming a global leader in exporting PPE. So how could we do this? So first is standards. So when I talk about standard, only one body comes in my mind, which is Bureau of Indian Standards in India, which got set up the moment we got independent and got regularized as a legal body through an act in the year 2016. And what is it today doing? It has set standards of more than 20,866 products in the country. And we are now struggling with making 371 products mandatory as recommended by the Ministry of Commerce, which will take care of imports also. So we need to understand very clearly that we have to be competitive globally. In order to do business in a very conducive manner, which we are defining as ease to do business, and to generate revenue and employment, the first thing is our domestic quality has to be world best. In order to compete globally, we have to accept the world's best standard to be accepted in India and not look at Indians and guinea pigs, that you can sell anything you feel like. You can experiment anything you feel like. No, you cannot. It's high time we realize that we don't have to depend on laws to do that. We need to depend on our ethical business practices. We need to become ethical in our business practices to ensure that we encourage ease of doing business and we generate huge amount of employment in the country for the youngsters. Today, you cannot imagine the amount of opportunity we have. You see, I always believe, Manu, I always believe diversity brings in opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
When we are in challenging situations like what we went through the pandemic, it brought open huge opportunities, let me tell you. Today, health sector is going to be the buzzword. And I will speak later with you, as we move on, because this is an opening remark. I don't want to take.
No, absolutely correct. So taking from you, I think I would summarize like few keywords where you said like setting standards, being innovative and opportunist. And from here on, I will move on to Dr. Avijit, where we would love to hear his wisdom and knowledge around the sector, which was one of the booming sector in the country, contributing good double digits and good extrapolating effects to the economy of the country. and suddenly it tanked and suddenly it built back. So, Dr. Abhijit, how do you feel about the real estate and the hospitality as a whole? Because this is something which was like totally brought to a standstill. No travel, no events, nothing moving out, no socializing. And the buzzword was like social distance. Earlier, the buzzword used to be social gathering, and the buzzword was social distance. So, like, even in the houses, there were situations where people were stuck, and one is in one room, one is the other room, and people are even connecting with each other over a call or WhatsApp. So, how do you see this whole thing bouncing back in the industry?
Thank you, Manu, for this question, and namaste to all the fellow panelists over here and to the delegates out here. Manu, your question really made me very emotional because as a head of administration and procurement, wherein real estate is a part of my domain, I have seen this sector emerging like anything, and I have also seen the downfall of sector in just 3 months of time. In January 2020, China declares COVID as a pandemic. In spite of fact that, we see a lot of activities happening all around, nobody was even aware that this pandemic would last for ages and it will become a part of our life over a period of time. So in the month of, March, we saw lockdown happening, and we all felt it's just a matter of 15 days and things will back to work. And these 15 days is still 1.5 years where we are still struggling to get back to normalcy. But I would like to say that it's not that things have not improved. Definitely, we have seen a lot of improvement in terms of real estate which had fallen down. It is really emerging, and it is also touching up new heights. Although commercial real estate has been impacted, but we have seen a lot of changeover on the residential side, because what COVID has taught us is a new flavor to work, and the new flavor to work is a work from anywhere. It's not only work from home, work from anywhere. When you talk of work from anywhere, it means the demographic is not a limit. And today, most of the organizations who are hiring people are not looking at the demographic, they're looking at the talent. And what has happened in lieu of this, people have got ability to, buy houses or, move out of a location from, slum to a B grade or C grade building, at least to a better situation, a better lifestyle. So definitely there has been a significant pickup in the residential part. Commercial real estate has been impacted very badly. The main reason for commercial real estate and the hospitality sector has been two major things. One is the lockdown, and second is the social distancing. And third has been, the international tie-ups, which are still not, retained. We are just hearing that the government of India has issued a circular to start the tourism from next month onward, which is really a very positive sign of the recovery of hospitality industry. And these two industry were major contributor to the GDP of the country, not only in India, to the globe. And the way we saw downfall of this industry was really painful for everyone out of us. Real estate got impacted because first thing is development could not happen in lieu of stringent lockdown process, as well as the social distancing. While we see lockdown happening, lockdown continued for several months, and in lieu of that, many migrant labor moved out to their natives, and bringing those labors back to the construction site was really a challenging thing for every developer. And in lieu of that, there has been a cut down in terms of the employment.
I will point out one thing, like you brought out a very good thing, which was work from home and moving on to work from anywhere. On this, I will move on and I'll come back to you, and I'll love to hear from Mr. Sriyansh. Globally, there has been trends and there has been indications that a lot of organizations are even now thinking long term that should they bring the staff back to the office or not, definitely from a financial perspective, and even from the employees perspective. A lot of employees are also showing reluctancy in coming back. I don't know, but it's a good point where people are looking from a mindset. So all this situation where we talk about unemployment, because it has really contributed, and as you said that a lot of people have lost jobs, the money and the rotation was not there. So Mr. Sriyansh, what is your take or your advice for our attendees and our viewers here? Like, I'm slightly going generic here for a minute, and then we'll come back to the specific topic, because it's very, very important in today's time. The mindset is very, very important. So as coming from a big group, which is really contributing a larger segment to the economic development, how do you see this playing a role? And then we will come to your segment of steel power, wherever you would love to add value. You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Sriyansh. Please unmute here.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Manu, and I'm really happy to be part of this discussion. And first of all, it's very great that these two topics from from Professor Bejon Mishra, setting standards, and Mr. Abhijit Sarkar, new flavor to work from anywhere. That is
Yes.
what your question says. Basically, people are really reluctant nowadays to do freely wherever they are, to move out or work in the crowd, or rather regular work, because people are really offended. What I feel is, or a bit, I should call it, I'm very much concerned about communication also. So people are really reluctant and a bit afraid, you can say, and a touch of laziness also got introduced. That is what my feeling
Yeah.
says so.
Okay.
And it's a very practical approach to the people, that laziness, just because of lethargic attitude in this duration of 1.5 years. And it is really shock that people are not moving out nowadays and just passing the buck.
Mm,
Okay, not me, you do it. Why?
yeah.
Let us do it. That was the spirit earlier. And nowadays it is very much self-centric, or whatever you call it, is a very lethargic attitude has got introduced, in my opinion. And I have, as you said, you will give me another opportunity to explain ease of business.
Correct.
But the question is really very much serious, that it should not be this attitude in overall, even in every sector. Every sector means manpower. If we go down to like labor also in that attitude, though they want to earn money but not to work, they don't
Perfect.
want to work. And
No,
at
no,
the
no.
same at the
Yeah.
same time, officials are also in the same pattern, that they want to earn money, whatever the means earlier it was, but in a very lethargic manner, or by not doing so, if they get money, is better. Is
No, no.
very shocking.
Correct. Correct. You really pointed out right. You brought some alarming points. And I think, Dr. Abhijit, you really brought a good point to the discussion. Is like working from anywhere. And is it like talking about getting global? And I would love to hear from Ms. Pooja here, where we see the segment like MSME playing a larger role in terms of doing business or generating employment, and the so-called word called startup community, where government is also promoting a lot of schemes of promoting entrepreneurship. But now here my question to you would be that how do you see this entrepreneurship really culminating into the real delivery of the product or the real delivery of services and the revenue churning around? Like as Professor Mishra said, a lot of avenues coming up in health segment. Are people really taking steps forward? Is government really supporting? Yes, there might be great schemes, but what is your take on it and how people are taking it forward?
Basically, I would like to mention that things are changing. We have seen huge disruptions in market. Also, for MSMEs, things are very challenging right now. Also the way ahead is challenging. The new normal has changed. Everything has come online. Like we discussed just before the commencement of the meeting, that the startups are now like fintech, agri-tech, health tech. So everything is on technology platform. So I would like to appreciate government and its initiative. And also businesses parallelly, they have to reach to the rural areas where most of our population resides, and a kind of exposure of internet is very much required to them, and government is also parallelly working for that. I would like to mention about a scheme, that is PM1 scheme. So it was recently launched by our prime ministers, and like earlier, like before 2 decades, we had PCOs. So now the new term is PDOs, public data offices. So they are basically creating a local Wi-Fi network, and that would be high speed, all connected through online kind of recharge systems. So definitely business can reach to the consumer, and consumer can also reach to business online. So that is a positive development. Yeah.
On this, I would love to go back to you, Dr. Abhijit, first, and then to Professor Mishra. What are the real challenges? Yes, we are talking there are huge opportunities. I am sure I would not, I'm not saying a word challenge in a negative connotation. I am saying that what are the positive aspects you would like to highlight that one should work on in exploring the avenues of generating opportunities and revenue? So to you, Dr. Abhijit.
Manu, I will tell you one thing, although we see that, people are always saying a fact that COVID has impacted the economy, but we also should appreciate that there are certain industries which has grown the highest level of significance during this period. For example, if you have to talk about e-commerce, and had this, sector not emerged, the sustainability of everybody out here would have been a major concern. We have seen the level of, the support e-commerce has given. Why it is so? The opportunity for e-commerce only came into existence because of the robust technology. See, most of the organizations which suffered are only due to fact that, although many of them were even allowed to work under the, governance, they could not function because of lack of, the technology. So the major opportunity for every organization is today customer is looking at experience, and this 1.5 years, your customer has become a tech savvy. The guys who were not even bothered of looking at a smartphone and doing their transaction, they have been finding themselves to be more comfortable, transacting through their app rather than going to a bank. So that has given a dual way advantage. One is, everything is moving towards digitalization, clean and safe. At the same time, the opportunity for the overheads of, the industry is also getting down, because if I have to operate a retail bank or a retail operations, I would not require, such a big floor plate as I used to require pre-COVID. But it doesn't mean that I would be eliminating the presence of my office, because today the customer also believe in, doing an handshake, because namaste is our culture, but handshake is our, habit. And people are not going to give away this habit so easily. But there are significant opportunities. But then, and we have seen, all the technology initiative for various organizations which were on pipeline, or which were in the course of implementation. And if they have to be implemented, they would have taken 2-3 years. But then the moment COVID struck, most of the organization implemented that in 2 months of time. Why? It's a mindset. People don't want to adopt technology because of the fact that either they feel they are not competent of using it, or they feel that, technology may not be a result oriented or a result driven. Probably we have not tested that. But in this 1.5 year, COVID has really proved that, a huge opportunity rise ahead of you. And in case you really need to explore that, a new opportunity, definitely migrating to a technology is one of the important facts. And in this last 1.5 year, we should also see people don't think much on the smart cities, but the way smart cities have functioned because of their technology calibration with public domain, none other building could give up that opportunity. So I can see the opportunity for real estate scaling up within a different flavor, different pattern. The buildings are going to be more smarter than what used to be earlier. People are going to get a better experience of, the technology getting into picture. But then we should remember one thing, Manu, the major job cut is due to COVID. But then the secondary reason to that is, their competency level, because when technology was brought into picture, many were found incompetent of even handling that technology. So that's how many people have to leave up their job. So in case somebody has to survive It's not that there is no opportunity, because COVID has eliminated 10 positions, but COVID has created 20 new positions. So now, are you in a position, or do you have that ability to retrospect to that 20 position and upscale yourself with the trend and adapt a change? That is something is a question mark for all of us.
Perfect. And taking a lead from new opportunities, I think the most booming sector in this time was health. So I'll go back to Professor Mishra, and then I will move on to the education and the sustainability to you,
Thank you.
Abhishek and Sriyansh. Yeah, to you, Professor Mishra.
Thanks a lot.
How do you see?
Yeah, go ahead. Ask me.
Yeah, how do you see the health segment really shaping up, and what are the basic essentials you would recommend? Because I see that this is the segment which is really shaping up. So with your experience and wider connectivity, we would love to understand that what are some basic essentials that people or the industry should work on to optimize this segment.
See, today, Manu, with all the experience which we have gathered in the last 18 months, every citizen wants healthcare to be delivered at home.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about healthcare delivery at home, you talk about telemedicine, you talk about, e-pharmacies, you talk about all kinds of mechanisms which technology will support. You all will be surprised to know, and I must tell you all today, 80,000 crores is lying under the Universal Service Obligation Fund. I do not know whether you all know or not. Every bill which you all pay in telecom sector, 10% goes to the USO fund.
Yeah.
That 10% is supposed to be used for the purpose of developing better connectivity in remote areas and remote locations, and enabling citizens to be able to access telecom services. Now we have been struggling till Reliance didn't come into the picture. We were struggling to put in fiber optics in our country, and we had given huge targets. The problem, Manu, is we need governance with strict targets to be set and delivered in the most economical and competitive manner. Why do you think our public sectors went down the drain? We were not even getting 2% return on the investments done in the public sector. And today I'm so happy that at least the Modi government has taken the courage to disinvest and get rid of those institutions which were a burden to the citizens, which were a burden to the common man, which did not serve any purpose, not even employment. People used to get away saying, oh, public sector because it generates employment. Rubbish. It doesn't generate any employment. It in fact curtails employment. It is not bringing in efficiency at all. And you will see, Manu, in the years to come, like Pooja has mentioned, you see, we will be going healthcare, not only domestic, but global. People from UK will be consulting people in India on Ayurveda.
Yes.
Those days are coming, on health and wellness. So all the health and wellness centers, which is the dream of our Prime Minister, 1.5 lakhs health and wellness centers to be created in the country, will become a reality because they have agreed to make it a PPP model. But unfortunately, the private sector is not waking up. I do not know why. What will make them wake up? I think they only look at short-term returns. They look at how to create a valuation by doing an IPO of Zomato and things like that. And huge IPOs are coming up where public money is going to get invested. I am very cautious and careful to see that what is it going to come into the health sector. And I'm telling you, universal health coverage is going to be the buzzword for tomorrow.
Yes.
We have only 4% penetration in terms of medical health insurance today in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And the world average is almost 15 to 20%, if not more. India is going to emerge in terms of providing healthcare packages to the common man, which is partly covered through the Ayushman Bharat, but the middle class, the missing middle class, that will be seen to be now becoming very proactive, opting to get into health insurance coverage. And government is going to do that in partnership with the public sector. So the private enterprises, private investors are coming into India to get into the healthcare sector, especially insurance, where we have increased the FDIs to come into the insurance sector. I am sure tomorrow you will see universal health coverage is going to be the buzzword in every family. Everybody is going to get covered, and everyone will sit at home and on phone access the best of consultations rather than traveling 500 kilometers to reach a tertiary care or a healthcare center. They will be able to get care right at the doorstep through technology. But of course, again, let me caution you, Manu, if we don't deliver as per agreed timelines in a most competitive manner, we will lose out. We will lose out. And you will find that people from overseas will capture this market, and our domestic players will keep gaping at each other and will not be able to capture that opportunity. So I would like to appeal to the private sector, especially my friends from Reliance, that look at it from a holistic view and give a competitive rate which is sustainable, which is doable, which is effective, and brings that smile on the face of the consumer. And I always said, you learn from feedbacks, you learn from complaints which you get from consumers. You become innovative only when you listen to the consumer very carefully. So we have to listen to the patients, we have to listen to the citizens in terms of healthcare needs, and innovate and be creative to create ease of doing business and generate employment at the taluk level, where we need talents. We need young talents now. The new education policy is talking about that. It's not talking about degrees.
Yeah.
It is talking about talents. It's talking about skill development. So we have to focus a lot on that. I think I've covered what you wanted.
No, absolutely. And I would also raise eyebrows for the fellow colleagues coming from the giant groups like Jindal's, Adani's, and Birla's here. So moving on further, I'll take on to Mr. Shiva, and definitely we'll come to education and the Abhishek. There is a lot coming on your plate. I was keeping education for the last point because everything will boil down to education. So, Mr. Shiva, over to you. We would love to understand. Yes, we are talking about health as a segment, which is really booming up because it has raised eyebrows. People have understood that there is a need of talent, skill, infrastructure, reach, where bodies and organizations like Pooja are really contributing in taking things to the last mile. How do you feel that where we say natural resources, that's the most important thing in growing economic situation and the development of the country? Where we talk about renewables, we talk about SDGs. I'm sure these things are far ahead, but it has to start. Climatic changes and a lot of other things. So what's your take and what's your advice for our listeners and viewers here, that how we should look at this segment, and through this platform of SOCHM, what are the basic things you would like to highlight or a concern you would like to bring? Because I don't want just we all talk positive. I think as Professor Mishra and even I would say every one of us have highlighted, and even Abhijit, we have all highlighted that what are the things we need to improve. So it will be great to learn from you with your vast experience, that what are the things that we should improve in terms of generating employment and ease of doing business. Shiva, over to you. Are you connected? Could be some technical error that we're not able to hear from him. Hello.
Shivaji, you have to unmute yourself.
Suyash, can we have your viewpoint on this and then we move to Shivaji?
Yeah, it's about natural resources, right?
Yes.
Yeah, mining sector, we have very vast experience, you can call it, because things are very in a bad shape nowadays, and that is the natural sources what we use. So I can talk on that, but things are in a different shape. Like mining, there is a system called penalty.
Okay.
I'll just give a tip of it.
Sure.
Later, Mr. Shiva can elaborate it as he is the expert of it. We a lot of auctions are going on, and the zero date. What I have taken up is a zero date mention. There is no timeline. First of all, there is no timeline. As Mr. Professor Saab also pointed out, we experienced for any penalty, government has no timeline. At the same time, there is no definition of zero date, and the time they want, they put penalties to the buyer, and the allotment, procedural delay, and the approvals, getting approvals. After that, there must be a permission to operate. There is a operative consent. Consent to operate is a one term which has to be used for any mining, and there is no cutoff date from where they will exactly put penalty to us. Auction date, and they decide one date. From this date, we will charge you penalty. In between, there is no system as such to just get the get all clearances on table, and there is no link between these dates and the procedure. Earlier, there was a timeline, so-called like a single window system was there, and it got introduced nicely,
Correct.
but it did not work properly, and ultimately it vanished in a way. And because of that, there is no result on time, and the penalties are very high. Ultimately, result is taking all the issues to the court and prejudice. Then ultimately, things are not workable. So,
So do you feel that the ease of business is a concern here, or what are the
definitely,
highlights you would like to advise to our listeners and viewers?
a lot of things are to advise, because if I'll put some points like ease of doing business will be the best when there is a complete reduction of paperwork, first of all, or we should call it file movement prior to final approval even.
Sure.
Then timeliness. Time must be essence, and accountability of officials for the same, because defined clarity to avoid delays. It is a very precious thing that someone is basically applying and waiting for the next call, what can come up, because there is no timeline, and they are really going behind the way they want it, and the procedural delays prolonged, like everything, time, hassle, and frustration. At the same time, we are really abide by the different rules, and we are ultimately, again, result is penalty.
Mhm.
The concept of committees, subcommittees, etc. within the department must be removed. Processing procedure of files must pass through maximum 1 or 2, 3 persons maximum, and queries must be once or twice maximum, because these things are giving prolonged procedure. At the same time, target oriented performance and accountability of each person involved, each official, rather, I should specify it. to develop and generate revenue should be made a benchmark for their CR, good performance, and promotions, but the performance must not be commercial in approach.
Mhm.
Right? Data submitted by industries through monthly reports, environment, mining, forest department must be made the norm for all. Automatic renewals consent must be there. All compliance, every reports must be ready with the government officials, government departments before calling us for any auction even. What do they do nowadays? When we call everything, the procedure of auction is getting completed. Then they call all report from us, through us. We need to submit their report. We need to go to Dhanbad, and from there we need to take mining plan and all, etc. report, coal fields report. Then we need to submit it. Why don't they get it done on their own resources? Because they are resourceful man. Resourceful system is there with them. It is not with us, unfortunately. And problem is that ultimately we are the sufferer, and we need to collect everything, we need to submit everything, ultimately, which is not in time. The forest part is a big drawback, because clearances are must. We are abide by the clearances, and clearances for the data itself, we have to roam around like anything, and ultimately it gives impact of not doing the thing in right manner, or rather
Yeah.
corrective action.
Yeah,
Clearances must be done at a state level itself. Public hearing or projects must be stopped. Requirement of consent to established from state environment board for approvals or expansion, renovation, upgradation, etc., even by MOEF, must be abolished. Reason: we are running a plant, and the plant which is already running, why the renewal is being pending when the due date is, say, 1st of February is due date? That time they also know, I also know, that due date is 1st of February, but they will wait for our application to come before 3 months. Then only they will start thinking on it. Start doing is another business. Start doing is on 1st of February, they will give us a notice that you have not renewed, so that we will go to them again and tell that we have applied in the November itself that this has to be renewed. So we need to put documents rather than they should guide us. They should facilitate us. What they are doing, we are being ruled by the ruler, which is not correct actually. They are the facilitators. The term facilitator has to be introduced.
If you allow me, I just want to add what Suresh has said. You know, what Suresh, you have said, you have spoken from your heart, man. It's really good to listen to you. You see, what I want to tell you, it's not a rocket science. It's nothing rocket science, you know.
Exactly.
It is only a matter of how much you
Attitude.
want to divulge, you know, how much you want to share, how much you need to share, and how technology has become the biggest enabler today. You know, today on a click of a button, we can come to know everything.
Exactly, sir.
My only contention is, and my fear, which Suresh has said, is that my data is my data. It should be well protected. It should be kept in such a manner that the key to the lock has to be only with me. If it is my data, the key has to be with me. So if I want to share it with somebody, then I should be compensated for that data. Why is somebody stealing away my data? You know, see, my intention is, doesn't the government, the regulator, the policymakers know this? They are making money out of this. You know, and as a lot of people have said, you know, data is going to be the oil for tomorrow. You see, my contention is that it is my oil, man. How are you trading with my data without my knowledge? And this is a gross negligence. it's a gross plunder. So my full question to always, to the government is that please, you are doing great job. You're doing everything beautiful. Let's use technology. Let's give that empowerment to the citizens and let them feel, because they are the ones who are paying the money. So they should feel that I am the owner, not the government. Government is not the owner. It's my tax money, man. You see, so government is not the owner. It
So,
is
so
me who
perfect,
is the-
perfect. Yeah, we will come back. And I think I didn't stop him because he was really in the flow and the sentiments were flowing out. So that is the reality which I wanted, because we all know the goody things, but there are a lot of challenges also. That is what we need to uncover.
sir.
And no, great point, Mr. Swash. And Mr. Shiva, we come to you. Are you connected now? No, you have to unmute, sir. Shiva, we can't hear you. No, you are. Yes, yes.
That's okay. It was muted from that side only.
Oh, okay. I'm
Okay.
so sorry.
It is my side, Rangu, so I could not have any. I could not control myself, and the net is out now. It is okay. I connected 2-3 sources. It's okay. I hope I'll continue with you. So can you pass that interesting question to me, please, Manu?
See, my point to you was you are working on certain things which is moving towards sustainability. Okay. Now, as a broader terms, we all in our organizations are using a lingo called SDGs. Great. But we really want to hear from you. What are the real challenges or the concerns or the key pointers one should work on, which will contribute back to the growth of the economy, towards generating more employments, and what are the corrections that needs to be done for so-called saying ease of doing business? It's just in English, but that's English when it's translated on ground is not that easy. It's not that easy. So we would love to hear from you that what is your take on this and what is your advice and viewpoints, so that SOCHM, when they work back as a body, as a trade council, we put some white papers back to the department and the government. It will be great to hear from you, Mr. Shiva. Hello. Looks like some network challenge.
Answer your questions exactly the way you
Okay.
asked, but my advice would be very clear. Is it audible to you? Is it audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir. You are audible.
Just now I'm listening, from sir. See, forest, environment, and land itself is a three big project. I don't know what is happening. Is it audible?
Yes, it is audible. Yes, please carry on.
Okay. Yeah, just now I was listening from your side, Professor and Mr. Suyas was telling something about forest, environment and all. So I would like to just mention forest itself is a big project. Forest, environment, land. Unless in India or anywhere globally, these three issues, land, forest and environment is addressed, you won't be able to do any business, any kind of business anywhere. And you can't compromise with these three issues. You should have business, but you cannot compromise with the environment, with the society, with the cost of health of the people. But for the ease of doing business in India, I'm speaking with respect to India, we should have all the protective measures. Today, what is happening? Every state is crying for the coal. It's a fact of the day. You are not able to give the land to the company, to the projects, but you want power. You don't want to spoil your vegetation, but you want power. Yes, don't spoil the vegetation, but in between we can find out the way we can compromise. You don't compromise the health, but you have to have the balance between the nature and your requirement. You have to find out some solutions. Coming to the regulatory part in India, what is happening, what Mr. Suyas was telling, I agree, 100% agreed with them, with him also. What is happening? See, if you apply for a environment clearances, go for the tour and pray before the environment appraisal committee. You put the application today. After 3 months, you might be getting to put the presentation before the ministry to get just terms of references. You will be getting a list of terms and conditions to come with the project report, to come with the draft EIA-NMP. And if you deal all the projects separately, it will take 9 years, 3 years for one project, 3 years for land, 3 years for forest, 3 years for environment. How do you think that you are going to get the power tomorrow? Why you are crying for the coal?
Correct.
Just now, there was power cut and I was out from this conference. So
Yeah.
today or tomorrow, you have to find out, you have to find the technology who will create some balance between the society and the environment.
Mhm.
Today or tomorrow, you have to find out the solution which will create the balance between the culture and agriculture.
Mhm.
So my point is produce, recycle and reuse. Produce, recycle and reuse. So society, social, in between the products and the products and the debris, in between the products and debris, the products and the waste, you have to have one governance which will have a real authority, which will have the real challenges to reuse the overburden, which can protect the environment at the best possible level.
Sure.
So my point is, we need to think, we need to bring those laws which will not only put the which will not only put the barriers in between government and projects, but which will facilitate the industrialists, which will facilitate the business also to come forward and move and grow your business. At the same time, you work for society also. So this is my point of view.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, perfect. Great. I think a very good point where you used a statement and the word called felicitating. That's very, very important. So moving on to you, Abhishek, how do you feel education plays the most important role? And now we are using all the jargons like skill, talent, new education curriculum, NEPs, 2.0, 4.0. So we would love to hear your take that how technology is bridging and how do you see the shape and the reshaping of education for the overall growth of for the economy and the upcoming times ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Manu. Like we were discussing earlier, this is the time that the economy is growing and a lot of companies are actually starting to recruit, right? And most companies are actually looking at recruiting fresh hires for many reasons. They want to reduce their cost. They want new talent, fresh blood to come into their organization. With all of that, this is a good time for the education industry per se, as far as recruitment is concerned, because the students who are coming out would like to be placed, and the government is also encouraging recruitment in the sense that you mentioned NEP. There's one minister now for education and skills. Earlier there were two different ministries, with different divergent views. Now they're coming together. Previously, somebody in the skilling ecosystem could not get into the education ecosystem. There was a gap in between, which is being bridged. So a lot of new things happening. NEP is a fantastic document for those who haven't read it. I would strongly urge that you have a quick read, which is changing the landscape of the education industry in the future. I would just want to touch on one topic, which is the apprenticeship bit, where the government is encouraging companies to take up new recruits, freshers. And if the companies take up freshers, then there's a lot of benefit that the company gets. On the other hand, of course, it is mandatory under the law to take up apprentices for every company. But the government is incentivizing and promoting companies to take up freshers. And for freshers out of college also, this is a great opportunity to learn on the job. And so a lot of new things happening in the education ecosystem, which is essentially bridging the gap between education and industry. And that's what we want to do. Previously, it was all talk, but now there's a lot of work which is happening around that. And I'll not get into the details, but it's exciting times for education and skills industry in the near future.
Okay, so when you talk about education skills, so coming back to you, Pooja, when we talk about the scheme of PDO, and today everyone is talking about data, digital transformation, how seriously you feel that digital is bringing a transformation at a talukat level or at a block level, and it's really, the message is really getting percolated down, or what all great efforts needs to be done to be the evangelist of such programs? So we would love to hear from you. You are mute. Bharat, can I request the controller to unmute at least the panelists, because at times they get into the flow, but it becomes very tricky. They are not on.
Yeah. So am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, Pooja.
Yeah. So basically, answering to your question, sir, we can assess the reach through how the e-commerce is working. People are ordering from a small village, interior village, and products are reaching to them. They are trusting the e-commerce platform. They are doing payments through like UPIs, whether it's PhonePe or Google Pay. So they are using all these things. So now we can kind of assess that now people are trusting the system. People are moving towards the new trend, that is Digital India. Companies also are adapting such kind of methods to reach to customers. And also, but there's a little gap, I would say, that especially for MSMEs, as we are talking about, you know, the ease of business and employment and also the revenues. So definitely we cannot skip talking about micro, medium and small industries. So there's a huge gap in skill upgradation of those particular enterprises. So there are many innovations that people are also adapting, companies are also adapting, but few are left out. And for those, there must be initiatives to kind of equip them, connect them with the e-commerce platform or digital platform to increase the outreach, and for kind of for developing an ecosystem where healthy organizations can come out.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks, Pooja. Good input.
I just want
Moving
to
on
add,
to you,
Manu, if you agree.
Yeah.
Manu, if you agree.
Please.
I just want to add to what Abhishek said. You see, I come from Jamshedpur. I was born and brought up there. And what did I see amongst the Tatas? You see, I saw that they had something called the apprentice program. They used to take the +2 people and get them trained into certain skill sets. Is either a welder or electrician or a mechanical person, and those apprentices then got absorbed into the company because they needed trained manpower. So what I see lacking in our country is these kind of cultural heritage which we had built, where big industries used to have in-house kind of opportunities given to youngsters to be trained. That is today missing. It is not there. I don't find it, I don't find those clusters of small scale industries being encouraged to come around the big factories, which is there. When you go to Jamshedpur, you will find, a huge number of small scale industries have grown around Tata Steel, Tata Motors, who are all based out of that city. And all the infrastructural facilities were given by the Tatas and not depending on the government infrastructure. You see, government also facilitated, at one point of time, and they still facilitate. But the leadership has to be taken by the private entrepreneurs, by the private enterprises.
I completely agree. In fact, I just want to say I'm a product of Tata Motors and I've gone through this process. And I completely agree with you. I'm currently promoting this with all industries. About 200, 250 companies are currently working with me, and everybody is liking this idea. It's just that they need to get to know about this. And once they start implementing it is when they'll see the value. Because they would train and then absorb trained candidates on board. So I completely agree with you. Can't agree more.
Yeah, we can't forget our grandfather and our ancestors. We are tending to forget them. We are trying to ape the modern world, the so-called modern world, the Western culture. We have to create our own culture and create that culture to go overseas. You see, the world needs to learn from India rather than India learning from the world. But of course, it's an exchange. It's always an exchange. I learned a lot when I go overseas. But the point is, you see, I never forget that I am an Indian. I am driven by India and my philosophy. So I will always promote India and my philosophy and my thinking. So what my contention is, we have to go back to that place which has got lost. We have to bring it back. I mean, that is my, you can say, my concluding remark.
No. Definitely, we will love to hear a concluding remark again. And it takes people back where people say that India has been a Sone ki chadiya.
Even small groups, SSG and Taluka level, even L&T is driving this scheme, and many more NGOs they are driving. I have seen many groups in Hazaribagh, Tandava, Chatra, Latehar, Daltonga. I've been in that area. So many groups are driving this scheme. So it is going on. I've seen at the ground level.
It's high time.
Actually, this is the motive.
For a long
This is
time.
the motive what we have adopted long back, and ultimately we had to go for an engineering college.
Correct.
So, Suyash, how you feel that when we talk about the block level, from a block level and these levels, these might be prevalent in a certain segment or a certain pocket. But from a generic perspective, yes, we will not be able to address the nation, the country, all the segments here. But some keywords which you would like to highlight or bring to our notice that they should be worked upon for creating opportunities or education or talent, which will contribute back to the economy.
Thanks, Manu. Things are really starting, or rather beginning, from the first stone only. And first stone means very minute level, very much personalized level even. We don't go for even talukas. Let us start from home. And from that place, we need to do everything. And in-house, we are doing that. See, I'll just put an example. What is happening when we come to office, it's like 9 o'clock. Before 9 o'clock, someone has to come to start your office. It is not 9. We are coming at 9. Means that has to be started before 8:30. And the things will get open, ACs are on, everything is on, electricity on, cleanliness, that takes 30 minutes. So the things has to start from there. That means whatever the means, if I am talking about the policy, and policy means government. Before that, it is definitely not only district level, but taluka, but village. I just told there is whenever the things are coming or issues are coming, we have to go for MOEF. They call a meeting at a village level. When a project has already been finalized, say coal bearing area or iron ore bearing area has been defined, well defined. In fact, we don't define it. Government only decides this is the belt. And when this is the belt, means the defined belt has to have a proper through from every end. There should not be any later on meeting held and villagers have not accepted. No way. Any investor is ready to invest, means any businessman is coming, and business means profit. And lacuna in any means, rather investment when a rupee has been spent means the profit has to start ASAP. Earliest possible time, the profit has to start. And if you look from the angle of a businessman, if any investment comes up, definitely it has to have profit. Definitely it has to have concerned responsibilities, at the same time being facilitated. And facilitated means the whole system which is not in my control, which is not in our control. And facilities have to be, in fact, countered, rather defined, numbered, and in fact, the earlier I have already explained how accountability has to be there. Accountability of each official, each part.
So taking a clue from you, like when we touch words like education, knowledge, accountability, and the challenge is that I'm sure we all are a part of system where we say that 50 to 70, or rather on an outer limit, I would say 90, 100 kilometers from the places where we are operating, whether it's a Delhi, whether it's a Bombay, whether it's Bangalore, Koramangala, or it's Hyderabad or Begumpet, anywhere, like there is a drastic fall. There is a stoop down fall. Whether you talk in terms of infra, you talk in terms of education, knowledge, many things. Because when you talk about all these things like power, mining, these are all in like land banks, which is like beyond. So it's like mutual, I would say, compatibility that has to fall in place. People have to take ownerships at all level, as you rightly said, accountabilities and felicitators. So would love to hear from Dr. Abhijit when you mentioned about, you brought a word called smart cities. So we would love to understand from a smart city perspective and a facility management and hospitality. Yes, we are seeing.
Can I put one or two lines?
Please.
Basically, our panelists are really concerned about all these issues. Ms. Pooja also, and Mr. Abhijit also has rightly pointed. Ms. Pooja has pointed out PDOs. At the same time, Mr. Abhijit has pointed out adapt a change. Means the smartness in the working style, working pattern has to be introduced properly, and everything is digitalized nowadays, and things has to come in that way. See, if I am putting an example, like if I am applying for forest clearance, or rather consent to operate, so if 10 days have been defined, like timeline has to be there. So if 10 days are there, so if I go and follow it up every table, it will take 3 months, not 10 days. And if the timeline has been defined and the digital process will be on, so wherever the minister, wherever the concerned secretary, wherever the concerned department clerk even is there, he has to do it in the digital manner and let the things get forwarded every time, every moment, and then only the timeline can be controlled. It will be result oriented.
Yes.
And the result orientation is must, because any investor is coming, he has to have a proper check. He has to have a proper delivery. And when the delivery will get ensured, then the investor will get motivated definitely. And out of which the ease of doing business will get, the concept itself will get successful. At present, Andhra Pradesh is on top in ease of doing business. Second is UP. Third is Telangana. R is sixth. Why? Earlier we were in a better position. And we are missing it. That means there is a missing. We need to check it. What is the flaw?
No, absolutely. You rightly pointed, and there are many factors, I'm sure, which might be beyond the purview of this discussion. But yes, we can touch upon certain points. As you rightly said, that there are certain states which are ranking number 1, ranking number 2. Are they correlated to the investments coming up? Or rather, are they correlated to the industries that are being set up? And is industries generating more employment? Is it involving people moving from the real towns or the nearby towns or the nearby states or the nearby villages and going towards that segment? So when we spoke about infrastructure, we spoke about retail, we spoke about facility. That's where I would move on to you.
This was very much concerned about only ranking with ease of doing business.
No. So Sriyansh, there are many points. I understand your
lot of
point. No.
aspects are there, definitely.
No. So when you say ease of doing business, you have to look at from a perspective. So let me give you some insights. When you talk about the bubbles and the investment coming up. So today we talk about 13.07 billion as an investment coming up, but that's coming in the service segment. And out of top 7 companies, they all are recording 3,000 plus crores losses. Now, who's accountable for that loss? Will you be accountable? Will I be accountable? But they are posting record high losses. So I think we would love to have this discussion for the benefit of the group and for the benefit of our audience here. I think let's restrict to our discussion of the segments. And as what Dr. Abhijit mentioned, I would move there in terms of how do you see the facility management and how do you see the infrastructure and the smart cities. That is something which will be quite insightful for our viewers and audience to understand more about that from your perspective.
Manu, wonderful question. And I will tell you, the smart cities, we interpret that they are the cities which has come recently. But then we definitely had the smart buildings which are prevailing since decade, as when we saw that the IoT penetrating into our country. So it is not a new thing. But the major issue is the ignorance and people's adaptability to understand the concept lying behind the smart cities or the smart technology. And in the period of 1.5 years, people have really understood that what value the smart buildings or the smart cities can add to their business. And today we are in a situation where acceptability of your workflows don't exist at a time when you used to offer, an employee used to accept. But today you have created an expectation level, and once you have brought that threshold, you cannot go to a level of making them accept a thing, because they know what is the indoor air quality. And when I know that my employee is aware of indoor air quality, how do I manage that? So it's definitely a technology or a smart or intelligent building that is going to come into picture. So at a times when people used to buy building, they were not aware of how the building envelope has to be. They used to see that, okay, this building has a elevation and this is a smart building. But there are much of different elements and parameters which lies beyond the smart building. Although building is smart and intelligent enough, but then major lacuna for the fraternity out here is we don't have a people to manage or run the smart building. And apparently what has happened, like you have a building management system which manages the whole building, but we do, because when it comes to cost, facility management is always seen as a sector where we can compromise on cost. But now people have understood that this is a sector, if you invest the money, the return of investment is much faster, because today what matters is your employees wellness, what matters your employees health and safety, and the working environment which you are offering to them. So buildings, bodies like IGBC and ASSOCHAM GMs were prevailing since long, but nobody understood what the certification offered by these bodies matters. But today, now most of the facility guys are well aware that when I go to identify a building, I should at least look at the certification which that buildings hold, because when I know it is certified by ASSOCHAM GM or IGBC, it is a well maintained building. And today, and the building is not only a technology driven building, but the building is going to offer us back our investment in a much significant way, and it's going to create an environment, and it will help us to add value to the community in terms of sustainability, because today sustainability is a very key factor which every organization is looking for. And how the building is generating the energy, whether the building has a sustainable power as one of its element is something which every facility manager is aware of. So even the developers have started moving their development strategy into a different way. We have seen a lot of touchless economy coming into picture. I have seen few properties which are developed in last 1.5 years, which were in the finishing stage, but the developer trained their pattern and brought it into a stage wherein they can take care of, in case of a situation like COVID happens in future, the buildings are well equipped to manage those kind of things. So smart city has an ability to handle every pandemic, and basically the advantage of this building or the biggest probability of this building is they are well connected. One building can speak to another building, one building can speak to a facility manager, and that is how the communication collaborates and the information flow. So that is how the advantages of smart building is about. And as I talk about opportunity, there is humongous opportunity for the facility managers, because today we are having smart buildings, smart cities all around, but we don't have a people or skilled people to manage them. So we should understand we would require good people, but we would also require people who understand what smart cities can offer. So you definitely need to learn what the technology is offering. Otherwise, sustainability for those people will be at stake who don't understand technology. But definitely people who understand technology are there in a mindset of learning it. There is a massive opportunity for them, because now every building, 5 out of 10 will definitely be going to be a smart building or an intelligent building.
Oh, okay, great. So, Professor Mishra, coming to you, Abhijit, I'll leave one point that you mentioned about smart cities or smart buildings. How do you see that shaping up into the rural segment or the connect between the rural and the urban market? See, this might be very prevalent in a state like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore.
Excellent question. Excellent question. Manu, I didn't want to wait for you to complete the question because I'm very eager to respond.
Okay.
To hold myself.
So,
See
sir,
what
you want to
Abhijit
answer,
said.
or you want me to start and then you cover up later?
No, Abhijit, 1 minute. I want to tell you something which you must learn, because there was no RERA before. We brought in RERA. Why did we bring in RERA?
Correct.
Yeah.
The reason for bringing RERA was that there were black sheep everywhere. And everybody doesn't do the things in the right manner as it needs to be done. And that is why you always need a regulator which is neutral, which is unbiased, and which is competent. Not driven by political considerations, not driven by bureaucratic pressures. So the regulator has to be neutral. That's why we brought RERA. No, I'll keep that aside.
No, perfect. So, Abhijit, coming back to you, how do you see this whole concept of smart cities? Because it will even involve the lightings at the roads or the streets going to the last mile. It will even involve the securities to control, and which gets tied back to the insurance and other things on the streets in terms of surveillance, in terms of security, camera, coming back to a CSC center. So how do you see this overall segment of infra, facilities, and all those things boiling down to the rural segment? That is where I wanted to leave that question for you so that we can come back to you later. And I would love to hear the viewpoint from the other fellow panelists on
But
this.
you
So
will allow me to complete my viewpoint.
I'm coming to you, Professor Mishra. So the point was, I
got your question, Manu. You are talking about basically, do we see the potential of smart cities lying in the rural area? Is that what you want to understand from me? And how are we going to connect rural versus urban?
Absolutely. So I'll come back to you later. First, let's hear what Professor Mishra has to add.
I just want to take you all back. The founder of Tata Steel, J.N. Tata, Jamshedji Nauroji Tata, he wrote in the memoirs, before the steel plant was erected, he said, broad roads should be made, trees planted on both the sides, playing fields for the children, school for children, no colleges. For colleges, people had to go out of Jamshedpur. Only schools were allowed. But later on, of course, colleges came up. And the factory has to be on the center of the town so that people are able to access it comfortably even by walking. Now you remember those days, I'm talking about early 90s, when it was founded, people looked at the factory as the Maibap. They always looked at that this is the factory which is giving me the bread and butter. They didn't bother about environment, they didn't bother about environment pollution. But what they bothered about was, I have a shelter to live, I have good sewage system, I have electricity 24/7. The basic, my children can go to school, I can go to the temple to worship, all these facilities, I have markets to go and shop. So all the basic amenities were first created before the steel plant started getting erected. Now that was the philosophy of the founder of Tata Steel Giant Tata. And replicating that, what I wanted to tell you all was, when Bhilai Steel Plant came up, Rourkela Steel Plant came up, by then the whole philosophy had changed. The plant would be 20 kilometers away from the township because people did not want to see smoke coming out of the chimneys and did not want to see, the smoke getting into as a pollutant into their lifestyle. So the whole gamut of likes and dislikes changes as we move on. So the smart city today may not be smart tomorrow. You have to think 20 years from today to create a smart city. You see, which unfortunately in our country, we don't design for 20 years, we design for today, or we are trying to do something which was to have been done yesterday. It was supposed to have been done yesterday. We are talking about it today. Whereas you should have been thinking about 20 years from today, what you should have been doing, and how you should be progressing yourself. But we don't look at that. And that is why we go kaput and we spend money on something where it need not should have been spent. And we waste our scarce resource of taxpayers' money in creating an infrastructure which doesn't provide that, kind of a support system which needs to be provided in a sustainable manner. So this is where we are going wrong. This is where we need to improve. We need to create visionaries, not a 5-year vote bank tactics. You see, we are only
so sir, referring and restricting our discussion within the periphery of Trade Promotion Council as SOCHAM, do you feel that the ease of doing business
that is required?
Yes, and is not that easy as what we all said, and as we all said, and that's what will, after listening to Dr. Abhijit, I'll come back to you, Suyash, where we will come on the ranking and understanding a bit and your perspective on it, because when we talk about these things, suddenly we say that, oh, is the ease of doing business is that easy? Where or people can think about like as to what even Mr. Siva said, that land and other things, which are the futuristic acquisitions, futuristic plannings. So it will be good to hear from you, Mr. Shiva and Suyash, post Dr. Abhijit. Yes, to you, Dr. Abhijit.
Okay, so Manu, your question is very interesting, and I touched upon the point, work from anywhere, which means why we are able to emphasize on that concept of work from anywhere is the technology. So today we all know, for any decision, and as Professor Sir has rightly said, we should envisage 20 years future and do that, and that's what the technology is about. When you implement technology, you need to think of a very robust and agile technology which will survive for a longer time, because we see what is applicable today gets obsolete tomorrow. So technology is so emerging that nothing will remain forever, and your technology will keep on changing. And unless you envisage a future, definitely your investment will keep on, it will not be a smart investment anymore. So definitely we will see that, the demographic of smart cities going into a rural area, and you will see that, a district in Agra, a UP is connected to a smart city in, a tier 1 or 2 city in UP, and both the cities are collaborating with each other. Smart and intelligent city means, more technology, less people. And it doesn't mean that the people are going to be eliminated, but at the end of the day, the level of collaboration or connectivity or the communication we have to rely upon, technology plays a larger role. In case I have to monitor the security for the entire highway, right from one location to another, the entire technology will be able to drive me. We have seen this kind of thing in European and American countries. But India is still, although the brains are there to, create those technology overseas, but still we are lacking much behind in India. But definitely we will see that, future is very emerging for Indians. And we will see that, the smart technology is definitely adopted. And the fundament, the fantasy of IoT is it can connect to any devices. It can communicate to any applications. So that is how, as we know that, the urban real estate is really getting packed, and we don't have any scope of upgrading or, developing something with several laws and regulations and so on and so forth. Everything will gradually start going into tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and we will definitely see that there is a lot of upskillment happening even in the rural areas, and technology will keep all connected to each other. That is what my say to that.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks. Nice perspective and viewpoint from you, Abdi. So coming to you, Suyash, back from an ease of doing perspective, yes, we respect the bodies that certifies the rating. Or do you feel, or would you like to give us some wisdom and knowledge or insights that is ease of doing business correlated only to the GDP contribution, or is it contributing more towards the setting up of industries? Or is it like the way of getting more investments? What is the priority and what should be of the importance in the time to come? Because today every state is promoting themselves. Say invest UP, invest Punjab, invest Telangana, invest Karnataka. So what's your take on ease of doing business from the perspective of growth as overall?
Could I continue?
Yes, please.
See what GDP and the growth establishment of an infrastructure and industry it is all interrelated. And first of all, if a farmer, I'll just put again an example. If a farmer grows food and self-suffice, then rotate everything within their family and come back to again sowing. Means starting from sowing the grain and the whole year is passed, again come back to sowing. For that farmer, he is self-reliant, self-sufficient, and is not contributing to GDP, because GDP counts only when rupee runs.
Correct.
So that means when is an infrastructure or any industry is being set up, that means GDP is growing for sure. Low and high is circumstantial.
Sure, sure.
That means our attitude has to be receptive. Acceptability has to be there from both the ends. In fact, facilitator has to understand they are primed to facilitate, or rather impactfully to grow the GDP, to enhance GDP. Means the establishment of an industry which is being facilitated by the government or the facilitator will definitely, certainly increase the GDP by any means. It may be sometimes, see, circumstantial, what I just quoted is depending on, say, pandemic, just for an example.
Sure.
But this is an opportunity again.
Correct.
For different industry. There was a sluggishness, but it is definitely an opportunity for different kind of industry.
Correct.
And after post-COVID, it is immense opportunity for everyone. Everyone. In fact, entrepreneur and the newcomer, those who wants to establish an industry or a business, is the best opportunity, because things have changed a lot. Digitization of everything has come up. New platforms are there, and best is opportunity to sort selection is easier. Why I am saying so? Self-sufficient state is definitely like Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh is having coal and iron ore both. So the policy of this state must be in favor of these, considering these two elements, because whenever the policy makers are thinking, they must think that GST, whenever I am producing, say, steel plate, and if it is going to Hyderabad or Delhi and making some different things, I am paying GST and availing someone else and enjoying someone else for on the ground of GST. Whereas if the final product is being ready or getting ready within the state, by all facilities, just facilitate the entrepreneur.
Sure.
That means the pathway to the entrepreneur for the final product, then GST will be in-house.
Perfect.
So
No, I
it
think
will
that's
be
a very good takeaway.
within
That's a
the
very good
state
insight.
itself.
That's a very good insight, which really adds on to the revenue of the state, create more opportunities, and as you rightly said, that promoting entrepreneurship within the state and the services which get finally delivered. So here, do you feel, Abhishek, from an education perspective, how does the education and technology plays a very, very vital role in strengthening and building and educating the entrepreneurs more? Beyond money, it is all about delivering the services to the final consumer, because everywhere the consumer is very, very important. So how do you feel education and technology plays a role in that segment?
Right. I think this is the first of all, this is the age of the startups. We see so many startups coming up, especially in the technology space. There is no doubt, and there's so much funds coming in as well for startups. Looking at all of this, the education sector has also geared up, and most educational institutions today are focusing on making sure that entrepreneurship is one of the outcomes of the education today, and they are teaching entrepreneurship, which was never done earlier. So it's a formal part of education. When we talk about teaching education, we are talking about letting the students know that there is an option of becoming an entrepreneur, and how do you become an entrepreneur, from how do you manage your finances to what is an idea, how do you evaluate an idea, and how do you take it to implementation. So all of this is part of curriculum these days. And of course, government is also promoting with the Atal Incubation Center and a lot of incubation centers which have come across the country. And all of this makerspace, etc. When you walk into these areas, it actually helps the student to envisage what it's going to be a year down the line. How will they be able to come up with an idea, become an entrepreneur, and do something on their own? So the entire ecosystem today, the education ecosystem and the skilling ecosystem as well, is focused on being an entrepreneurship. I mean, we have a ministry for entrepreneurship, and which was never there earlier, right? So all of this clearly shows that there is focus, and the opportunity is there. It's for the students to take it up and ensure that they deliver to what entrepreneurship needs.
Sure, sure. Coming to you, Mr. Shiva, where you spoke about that there has to be certain plannings that needs to be done well in time, much before in time. What are some basic points or pointers which you would like to advise for our viewers, listeners here, before we move on to the closure? And then I'll move to Pooja and then to Professor Sabyu. Shiva, from your side, what are the futuristic things that we should work on, keeping the SDGs, keeping electricity, coal, and the resources in mind? Because those pointers as ease of doing business are long term. So do you see that circumstances and situations are playing a quite influential role in that?
No, it's very simple. My point, first of all, submission to the government is we can achieve 5 trillion economy by 2025, and it is only possible if we revisit the law 2013, the right to fair compensation and transparency in Land Acquisition, Resettlement and Rehabilitation Act. If it is not revisited and revised, nothing is possible. You forget about the 5 trillion economy, 5 trillion economy. It is not possible. Setting up industry may not solve the purposes. You will see and just see the past. Vedanta has failed in Landigarh. POSCO has went back. Naya Ultra Mega has failed. So like this, many projects has failed because of land acquisition, forest clearances, compulsory deficit land. Suyash may agree with me. So because of land, forest and environment, many projects has gone.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you revisit the policies, regulatory permissions, and make easy to get the clearances, compress the time, nothing is possible. Bringing simple industry in India may not solve the purposes. Number one. Number two, the whatever process we are following in the present system to get the regulatory clearances is really very tough, time consuming and harassing. And in this situation, you won't think about the setting up the industry. Even the industry which is going on is passing through many hurdles, and many of the industries are thinking to switch in other businesses. So we should have a robust user-friendly regulatory systems, number one. Number two, government should set a system to facilitate the industry to give all kinds of support with respect to finance, with respect to policies, with respect to other means, to ethical means, to give all the benefits and supports legally to support the industry to come up and to generate the employment. Unless you do and create all these platforms, people are leaving India. I won't quote the name. Recently, one company has left India, and the company set up in India is 50,000 crores. And that is organized sector. They're setting up industry in Indonesia. And employment in that company is not less than 20,000 people are working there. So they are going to lose their jobs.
Correct.
So company has to have this kind of facility in India to at least retain them in India. So we all have to think and come up in that way, and should put pressure on the government to think, decide, and let us facilitate the companies. So that is my view. Thank you.
No, thanks. I think that's really insightful. And on even behalf of you, Shiva, I'll take an opportunity and would put a request to SOCHM as a very apex trade promotion council that there are a lot of good points you and Suyash have highlighted, because those are long terms which will really complement towards the growth of the state and the overall economy, because the overall economy of India will not pop up on its own. It will pop up from states, blocks, people, and the industries on which the whole ecosystem is running, whether it is digital, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's the new fancy ideas coming up. So as we move towards closure now with our limited time, I think there were a lot of good insights, good perspectives to it. Pooja, we would love to hear from you some insights and some takeaways for an MSME and the startup segment. And then we move on to Professor Shah for the closure, and then to SOCHM.
So definitely the session was a whole success, sir. I would like to congratulate ASSOCHAM for that, and you for setting up the stage. So for me also, the whole session was full of learning. And as you said that we should also highlight few concerning points. So for that, I would like to mention a survey report from a leading kind of a community social media platform, Local Circles, about MSMEs. And that is the current situation of MSMEs after, the disruption created by COVID, and then the demonetization in 2016, definitely. So that is kind of continuing to that's the situation. So right now, close to 60% of MSMEs and small businesses expect to either scale down, sell off, or shut down within 6 months. So that is like the sample size was small, but the results are really worrisome. So that is why I would like to mention this. Approx 20% of startups and MSMEs have capacity to survive for 3 months. Nearly 40% are either without cash or capital, which may not last beyond a month. So there are many announcements from Government of India, RBI on various kind of loans, credit settlements, then Atmanirbhar Bharat, and also the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So there are many things, many support systems are there, but still reality in field is little different. Many MSMEs, they can't take the benefit because they haven't been connected to the formal banking system. So for them, these kind of announcements of facilities are kind of no use. Many don't want to take benefits because, again, the third wave is like the situation is not very clear. So they don't want to leverage too much because the current economic situation is critical, not where the things are not very clear. And another thing is that the inability to access timely and adequate finance due to kind of a perceived lack of credit worthiness for MSMEs. So that is also a very concerning point. And if we talk about a sector where which contributes 30% to GDP, contributes kind of 48% to exports, and employ 110 plus millions of people. And MSME has to be strengthened if we want to, strengthen the economy of India. MSME can decrease or narrow down the spatial kind of income gap, because they work in rural areas, they work in semi-urban areas. So definitely, like a kind of ecosystem has to be developed. Suyas sir also mentioned about facilitation and accountability from government system, from PSCs and bureaucratic systems. And so basically, what I wanted to say that as we're talking about EODB, so the compliances, they are like for MSMEs, like huge number of compliances are there. If I would just quantify it, that India's regulatory ecosystem has a universe over of 1,500 acts, 69,000 compliances, 6,600 fines and intimations. So definitely it is important to reduce that if you want MSMEs to function in a good manner, because there is a huge opportunity cost. Like MSMEs or the entrepreneur is wasting a lot of time on filing the compliances, and they are so basically governments, like many governments have already started taking measures for it. Like Punjab has decreased the compliances, and other states also are working on that. So I would like to point out 4 points. One I have taken from Suyas sir, that is accountability. First is rationalization. So definitely identification and eliminating the duplication of statutory record keeping is very much required.
Yes.
Like many times it happens that there are 5 acts which requires maintenance of, like I'm just quoting an example, like there are 5 acts which requires maintenance of wage register in different formats. And also there are multiple inspectors who can inspect salary data, leave, attendance, health and safety records. So for MSME, there's one format, and kind of any kind of regulatory body can monitor those particular formats, so that the MSME has not to waste time and resources for that. And so rationalization should review compliances on 3 3-step tests. First is legality, necessity, and proportionality. For how many MSME it is basically applied. So, and also stakeholder consultation is required at each level, and compliances which passes all 3 levels should be retained. Second is decriminalization. So there are 8,000 provisions with possible jail terms in Indian kind of law system. So entrepreneurs basically can't go to jail for simple, kind of procedural oversight or non-maintenance of records or missing a deadline. So basically a thorough review is required, and kind of intentional and inadvertent mistakes should be separated. And third, definitely, like Suyas has suggested, and also other panelists suggested, digitization. So kind of like paperwork, license renewal, or filings, or these kind of procedures should mandatorily be online, and there should be kind of a digital wall or something where kind of a DigiLocker kind of thing should be implemented. And like we are working for GST and in like similar manner. And from one source, all the data can be accessed to any department which is basically into regulating the whole process. And in-person visit can be cut down, and productivity can be increased for MSME, and they can save their energy for skill upgradation or kind of increasing the efficiency. So this is basically
Great. Thanks, Pooja. I think you at the last you played a good shot by giving us very influential and very powerful numbers, and you really narrated the right way of saying EODB, which is like we all are very, very pro to it. But yes, there are under the carpet, there are a lot of challenges which we all acknowledge, but we all are working for it. Right. But that's a good sign. That's an opportunistic sign to it. So over to you, Professor Saab, that how would you like to sum up?
Thanks. No, I would like to continue with what Pooja said.
Great.
My contention is MSME contributes 40% of the GDP today in our country. They are our main movers and shakers. And what Pooja said, all are absolutely right and accurate with facts and figures.
Facts and
correct. I ask Pooja, who do you expect this to clean up? Who do you expect it to do it? For me, it is the business which has to do it. MSME people have to come together under one umbrella to get it done jointly under SOCHM to move these things together to make it happen. You can't expect that somebody else will come with a magic wand and then they just go round and round and give you all the facilities. No, sorry. So what I want to tell you today, my concluding remark is, government should not be in business. That is number one. Number two, business should be left to entrepreneurs who park their own money, risk their own money to ensure that they bring dividends to their shareholders or at least to them, not profiteer. Government needs to just have an oversight in terms of ensuring that nobody is profiteering, nobody is enriching, nobody is plundering public property or natural resources. That is their work which they should be busy with. Number one. Number two, the most important issue, which I have been always trying to say, is that if you don't bring in standards, if you don't say, even as an MSME, if you don't say that you don't follow certain global best practices, you are non-existent. Let me tell you, you are absolutely non-existent. So the point is, you might call yourself MSME, but you are producing sturdy products. You are not in the business. That means you are actually plundering public money. So what you need to understand is, bring in education awareness on quality. If quality prevails, profitability will ensure it, will come. It is going to be assured. So if you want to, because I have worked with MSME, I have worked on Z. The Z whole fiasco happened. There were not even 300 people taking Z certification under MSME. I mean, why? I thought all the MSMEs will come forward and jump to take Z certification. Why did they not take Z certification? I mean, either they are not ready to get challenges.
Comply, correct, yeah.
So my contention is, if you are talking about compliances, I will tell the government that I, under SOCHM, I give a self-certification. If I am caught, you put me behind bars, that I am doing self-certification, which is wrong. Then you put me behind bars in 1 week's time. Don't give me that long drawn, legal processes in our country. My contention is, you got to make yourself accountable and transparent. You got to start from your home. If you don't start from your home, nobody is going to help you. Let me tell you that. So if you want to start good, come under the umbrella of SOCHM, make SOCHM the MyBap, tell SOCHM to take you forward in a right manner and show the path. Start with a particular state. For example, the region, which we are all talking about, in terms of making sure that we do that which is in tune with our philosophy. So I would request, as my closing remark, Bharat, don't let this conversation be only for a day, for a few hours.
Yeah, correct.
Bharat, if you want to really seriously take it forward, I want to tell you, you've got talented people like Pooja, who is there. Bring them in. Get them their responsibility. Tell them, karke dikhao. You see, and I'm sure they'll be able to do it. And of course, हम लोग तो mentoring करने के लिए तैयार हैं. तो देरी की करना शुरू करो. हम लोग तुम्हारे
Correct, absolutely, very well said. And I think there is a lot of food of thought, and I'm sure, Bharat, your diary should be full of taking right notes, right action items also. Don't leave it here. It has been a good interactive session with a lot of good insights. Pooja, you want to say something? You have raised
No. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of good insights coming from you, Professor Saab. Great facts and figures. It's like you played a good tail and ender shot, and you played 6 and 4s on the finishing line. So yes, a lot of good insights. Abhijit, you gave a very good. Yeah, she played the role right. She played the role right.
The last shot, the winning shot.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of good futuristic perspective coming from you, Dr. Abhijit. And Mr. Shiva, you really highlighting the futuristic thoughts and the need of a timely action from all of us. So I would say it was a good interactive and a good insightful session, and a lot of good thoughts coming from all the panelists, fellow colleagues all across, and a lot of food of thought and action for Bharat. And we all are there to support the SOCHM umbrella. It's going to be big, heavier, and more credible now. So over to you, Bharat, before we move on towards
Thank
the
you.
closing line.
Thank you, Mr. Manu.
Sorry, Suyash has something to add
Yeah,
on to it.
please, please.
Just one line. Policy advocacy is must nowadays. It is must, what I feel. Please continue.
Perfect. Yes. Over to you, Bharat.
So
Why
thank
we-
you, Manuji, for such a
Why-
such a wonderful moderation. So now
Correct.
since under
Lighter side.
so with a deep sense of gratitude on behalf of ASSOCHAM, I'd like to thank each one of you for taking time from your busy schedule and joining with us. And as mentioned, ASSOCHAM as a responsible chamber is taking note of all the topics which have been discussed, and we look forward for more papers to be more white papers to be presented to the government, creating a bridge as an industry and creating right kind of policy framework which is in need of the hour. A special thanks to Sri Bijon Misra ji for taking time and being with us. Dr. Abhijit Sarkar, Sri Siva Sankar Mahato ji, Sri Suez Shukla ji, Abhishek ji has left. And thank you very much, Pooja, for giving those wonderful numbers. And we'll be looking forward for a report such kind so that we can take it forward from our end, from Ranchi Regional Office.
Sure.
Thank you very much for all of your time. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thanks
Wonderful
everyone. All the
moderation.
best.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful
Bye-bye.
moderation, Manoj.
Mr.
Bye.
Manu
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Bharat.
and Professor
Thank you,
Sir,
Manu.
especially with
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Pooja,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Abhijit and Abhishek. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.